Hello there survivors, and welcome back to another video in ARK Survival Ascended. Today we're taking a look at all of my best builds that I've made this year so far. And of course they range from all the builds I did over on Lost Colony, which of course includes a bunch of Gothic builds, but also an all-in-one modern A-frame. But it also includes a bunch of other builds like my beautiful Rivendell build with the Elven Structure Custom Cosmetic skins, the Ultimate Log Cabin, an A-frame cliff base, a Star Wars inspired Spaceport, a castle Stronghold, an Adobe Base, a pyramid, an ancient Tek Temple, and many other builds already. So in today's video I want to take a look at everything that I've built this year so far, to take a look back at some of these creations, and of course look forward to see what else this year will have to offer. As always, if you enjoy seeing these types of build videos in ARK Survival Ascended and you want to continue to see more, make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and of course feel free to leave your suggestions for future builds you'd really like to see, and especially of course what kind of builds would you like to see when Genesis launches. Starting out with my Rivendell build, I had a lot of fun working on this one. I got of course early access to these beautiful elven structure skins and instantly knew that I had to take this chance to build another version of Rivendell, because it was actually not my first version of Rivendell that I've built in ARK, but this time of course taking it to the next level with these beautiful skins that really allow you to get close to those perfect elven architectures that we see in the Lord of the Rings movies. Everything from the bridge crossing the river to all of the separate buildings, the little gazebos that we have around the place, and of course the main structure in particular was a lot of fun to work on. And yeah, it's still one of my favorite builds that I've done so far. I love Lord of the Rings, so any chance to bring a Lord of the Rings build into ARK is always a good opportunity. Then I also felt like I wanted to design another log cabin. I love building these. I love the one that I did on Valgaro last year, but I also realized that it might be nice to have a bigger version that can really serve as your ultimate base, where you will have enough space for pretty much everything. And that's exactly the way that I designed this one. Of course, still trying to keep that cozy log cabin atmosphere, but bringing in some elements that would serve it well, being the size that it is. So it's a slightly more modern looking log cabin, I would say, with pretty big decks and walkways all around the place, nice balconies of course, but also plenty of space on the inside for a storage room, a crafting hall of course, but still the cozy log cabin room with your fireplace where you can just, you know, relax after a hard day in ARK, but most importantly have a basement with a dino pen big enough for even some of your bigger creatures like the Giga. And I'm definitely quite happy with the result, making sure that everything fitted into the log cabin shell. I think worked out pretty well in the end, and of course building it in the redwoods just blends in perfectly for this kind of theme. And since people always seem to like a A-frame base, I decided to do one over on Ragnarok because I hadn't done one there yet, and I wanted to make one right on the edge of a cliff, so you would have a nice platform or balcony sticking out over the edge where you could park flyers, etc. And I also wanted to try, of course, as usual, to take the A-frame in a different direction. So instead of having a full A-frame, I decided to cut it off on one side, creating for a much more interesting looking design with a decent amount of space down below to either use as a dino pen for keeping your tame saves or doing a little bit of breeding, but also of course a nice crafting room off to these sides, and the upper quarters for even more space for all of your storage needs, as well as of course some beautiful bedrooms with a very modern and sleek aesthetic to fit and to make sure that this looks perfect wherever you want to build it. I was also contacted by the mod maker who made the ancient tech custom cosmetics as well as the high-tech custom cosmetics, which is why I decided to do this Star Wars inspired spaceport base. And to make sure that this was a pretty practical and useful base, I decided to go for a breeding base because the spaceport itself, the design, the shape of it allows for a pretty big area, which is of course great if you're planning to do a lot of big breeding projects, with the main hangar being big enough to house a bunch of Karchas or Gigas, so you could easily get a decent breeding line going there. But also, of course, many other creatures would fit inside without any issues. And then using the tower connected to this base to use as your actual survival base. So this is where there's enough room for your crafting stations, your storage, and of course a nice bedroom all the way up in the control tower. And then using these cosmetics, I think, makes it really nice to kind of blend this into a Star Wars feeling build and a proper spaceport at that. And especially since this cosmetic offers a lot of awesome details to decorate with, whether it's the cool screens that you can have on the inside of your base, but also all of the satellites and dishes that you can have on top or hanging down from some places, and a lot of the awesome wall decorations too. I also tried out the Klinger's Castle cosmetics when it released, and I built this castle stronghold base to offer another castle design made by me, but then a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact, so it's a little less of a giant product to undertake, but still should offer you a pretty nice castle stronghold for you to utilize during your ARK playthrough, with the main tower of course offering you the most amount of space, whether it's for some dinos to keep safe at the bottom layers or park some of your flyers on the many balconies or all the way at the top of the tower, but also of course features a decent amount of space on the inside, so you could easily house all of your crafting and storage needs, and even still fly in and out with flyers to easily drop off your gathering team. And that all in a cool medieval setting, with this tower reaching up quite high, and of course the smaller towers off to the corners to give you even more space. But definitely one of my biggest projects this year so far has been the start that I did for the Gothic Town that I'm currently working on. Of course, inspired by the brand new release of the Gothic Craft Custom Cosmetics, which I'm still quite sad about that we didn't get these right away with Lost Colonies, because they are the perfect Gothic vibe. But I will say I am enjoying my work on my town here on Ragnarok, free of all of the snow, of course. And yeah, these cosmetics add so much, whether you want to do proper Gothic builds or just some kind of like medieval Gothic mix. They are a really fun skin to work with, offer a lot of cool details, and besides just building my main Gothic mansion, I instantly wanted to go all out with this, building proper street levels, of course, adding my Gothic manor, a shop, a little church, stables, and many more builds over the time, and many of these also featuring tutorials to build them yourselves. It's definitely been a lot of fun for me. Of course, in ARK, I tend to build or make my builds in such a way that you can still use them as a normal ARK base, meaning that even if they're designed just to look really cool, usually the insides at least resemble some kind of practical ARK base. But it's been a really fun change of pace to kind of let that go a little bit more and just focus on world building, building a little town here, going with the landscape, seeing where that takes me, and slowly but surely bring more and more awesome builds to life. And I do definitely plan on continuing this project over the rest of the year. Maybe not necessarily all right at the same time. Little breaks will give more inspiration and more awesome builds to come, but there's definitely some big additions that I still plan on making to this town over the next few months. Of course, this year also already saw the next addition to the Astraeus map being the desert, which of course was the perfect time to do a new Adobe Base. And this might actually be my favorite Adobe Base I've ever done. I don't think I did that many to begin with, because originally, of course, when we got Scorched Earth, we had also the Frontier skins, which kind of took away most of my building interest during that map. But for this desert, I decided to make a proper Adobe base, really fitting those desert vibes, and I actually really like this design. It fits the Adobe structures quite well, fitting their strengths, combining it a little bit with the Frontier textures, just because the contrast between the two is really nice. And that wasn't the only Adobe build that I did, because I also built a new pyramid base. I originally did a few on Scorched Earth, of course, but this time, with all the lessons of the years since, I decided to go for another pyramid base, a slightly different designs. Instead of using roofs to build a pyramid that is very pointy, I decided to go in layers, just because that would leave a lot more practical space on the inside, meaning that you can use this base for your ARK playthrough a lot better. You have a lot more space on the inside, even for some bigger creatures like a Giga, but also, of course, plenty of space for all of your other needs, because you get a lot more space on the inside. So for example, for your tames on the first layers, like your Gigas, etc., it will all fit in a lot easier. But also for, of course, the crafting and the storage layers, it's just a little bit more practical working with these straight lines. And these platforms themselves can also be utilized on the outside, of course, to park flyers and build staircases from the different layers to each other. And then I kind of built another pyramid, although it was more themed to be an ancient Tek Temple base, using the ancient Tek custom Cosmetic, which is another really cool skin, which kind of blends in the ancient feeling temple blocks with the more modern Tek feeling structures, which actually is quite a nice mix with those coppery textures, forming some kind of highlights for the build. And this build is a little bit more on the smaller size, but still features a decent amount of room. Of course, plenty of layers that you could utilize to park different tames on, or, you know, build a crafting room and a dino pen down below. And I just really like the way that this aesthetic blends together, especially since I built it over on the Island Reforged, which is a modded version of the island that Nakad has made to kind of improve the visuals over the original island release, which really makes this map again spectacular to play and to explore. And I think that this kind of temple fits in perfectly within the jungle biomes. Staying on the island a little bit longer, I'm also working on a bunker base there. Of course, if you follow this channel for longer, you probably know that I really like the bunker structure skins, and I really like designing bunker bases. The last one I did, of course, was a giant one in a cave on Ragnarok, but this one is just out in the open. And I started out with this Bronto breeding bunker because, well, the Paleo Bronto, the Evo Bronto, has just been released, and I needed a space big enough to be able to breed these, and I think this bunker definitely pulls that off. Of course, that means that pretty much every tame can easily fit on the inside. It's perfect for breeding, and I just really like these brutalist designs. And it's not a finished base yet, I still need to do the rest. So yeah, if you like this aesthetic, make sure to hang around, because in the future I will have some more work done on this base before it's fully finished. Of course, recently we also had the Acro added to the base game, which is definitely a great and fun addition, but a pretty sizable tame. So for its release, I decided to design these Acro Stables using no cosmetics or mods, so you don't need anything fancy. And I still wanted to make sure that they had their rightful place. So these stables can easily be fitted next to your existing base, and they'll house a few Acros. You can, of course, extend extend the stables if you need even more space, but at least by default you should be able to fit a fair chunk of them in there so that you can keep them safe, or of course do some breeding to get those lines going. And in the attic, of course, you can easily park a few flyers at the same time. I also built a base, actually 2 bases, on the top of the Dreadnoughtus saddle. This has been a much requested build for me to do, and I finally went around to do it. The reason I have never really done it is because the limit on a platform, of course, is pretty lacking. You can't really do that much with it. But I decided to make a normal version, so within the vanilla limit, but I also made one raising the limit for myself so that I could build a little bit more, and I think that really was a fun challenge to do. But I think in the future I might raise the limit a little bit further to do some proper building on the top of a saddle, because I think the idea of having a nomadic base, no matter if it's practical or not, is a really fun one. Of course, I started this year mostly focused on my Lost Colony builds, and one of the biggest builds that I did on Lost Colony was rebuilding this pre-existing tower into the ultimate breeding base, with not only plenty of space for all of your bigger tames like the Etholdir or your Railiax. You can easily fit in a cloner here. There was all the space you would ever need, and of course also a fully capable base with a giant crafting hall, a greenhouse, but mostly a ton of space for breeding and easy access for even your Gigadesmodus to be parked on the inside of the tower. But besides of all the Gothic builds that I did over on Lost Colony, I also built this all-in-one A-frame base. Of course, a reference to my classic A-frame design, which was one of the first modded builds that I did here on the channel. I made these double A-frames with the connecting bridge in the middle as the ultimate base, with a ton of space, of course, on the inside, as long as you like the modern and sleek designs. So on the first layer, you can easily house a bunch of different tames, keeping your breeding lines here, your Ossodons, or whatever you decide to bring over to Lost Colony or wherever else, of course, you want to build this, but also utilizing the best of the top layers, creating crafting rooms, storage in the bridge, connecting one side to another, and even have a greenhouse all the way at the top. And over in the outskirts of the Lost Colony city, I also did a Gothic Townhouse build, kind of staying away a little bit of using too much of the Lost Colony skins, since they are a little bit more Gothic-y dark tech rather than actual Gothic structures. I decided to mostly paint the normal vanilla stone to look a little bit darker and fit those darker moods, using some of the skins from the Bob Talltales DLC to make a nice townhouse and blend in just a few elements from the Lost Colony skin to make a pretty nice base, with a dino pen down below and a bigger crafting and storage room up in the top of the townhouse, and even a hidden greenhouse by using these beautiful skins. The start of this year also saw the release of the CKF, or the Castle Keeps and Forts custom cosmetic version. So not the modded version that you need in your single player or on your server, but the cosmetic version that is available for everyone to use, even on official. So I did a few builds inspired by that. A cozy small CKF house. This was actually during the testing phase to see how easy it is to start building with the skins instead of using the modded pieces that I've been used to. Also, I designed this house and stables on stream to, you know, showcase the release of these skins, and especially, of course, the awesome system that these skins offer, where you are able to change the variant of the skin that you're using before you place them down, which saves you a ton of time in the build process. You don't have to go and interact with the placed skins afterwards before you can get the right variants that you want to use. And finally, I also designed this cute little CKF windmill to finish off the rounds of a few of these CKF builds. One of the greatest features from CKF, both the modded version as well as the cosmetic, is of course these animated pieces. And in the case of this windmill, it just adds a ton of life to your builds if you have a few of these around. I think this might be my favorite build that I did over on Lost Colony. This Gothic Cathedral was absolutely my biggest build that I did there, although I guess technically the tower would have been bigger, but it was mostly filling in the existing structure, whereas this one was of course completely designed from scratch, really trying to figure out a proper way to use these Lost Colony skins in a satisfying way, but still going more towards the Gothic feeling build rather than the dark Gothic tech that the skins themselves offer. So the most that I've used from the skins is mostly the gateways, both the normal ones as well as the behemoth ones for the main pillars of this structure, and then blending in normal stone that was painted to go for that darker aesthetic, and then using greenhouse glass painted red for a stained glass impression. And I think that really works out pretty well and makes for a pretty awesome base that is definitely quite big at the same time. You have a lot of space here on the inside to utilize, and it hits just short of the official build limit. And a very recent build was this cozy little Hidey hole base in the Burrowbuck Hidey hole, which of course is a brand new release. It's actually quite a fun idea. It of course only lasts for 2 days, so you have to be quite careful if you want to use this as a base. But I think early game this can be a pretty good game changer. Instead of having to build like a little box to live out of before you get to build your proper base, you could just make this hole in a safe location close to where you want to build, keep most of your things in here whilst you work on building and designing your proper base itself. And it definitely gives you some cozy vibes, and as long as you hop in and out within the 2-day limit, it will keep the timer refreshed. Another Gothic build that I did over on Lost Colony was the Gothic Citadel using the cosmetic with the same name. This was a really nice cosmetic because it kind of took the aesthetic from the Lost Colony skins but kind of give them a more traditional Gothic look, and especially it gave you a lot more control, being able to turn off all of the red glows if you didn't want to go for that dark tech look, and instead giving you again a much closer look to what we would normally associate with the Gothic builds. And combining that with the normal Lost Colony skins, I think I made a pretty nice looking Gothic Citadel base, which again offers you plenty of space. There's actually a ton of room inside here. It's almost like a castle itself. And then finally, my final build, or actually one of the builds that I started at the start of this year, was the tribe base that I did with my tribe over on my community servers on Lost Colony, utilizing this dark versus light theme. I did a little bit of work on this base. I built the pagoda, which was meant to be the aviary for all of our flying friends. And then on the other side, I helped a little bit with the dark castle, building my own little room to the side with the shark statue on top, just to give myself a nice place to place my coffin and log out in for the day. Anyway, there we go. Those are my best builds in Ark Survival Ascended so far this year. Let me know down in the comments below what was your favorite build that I've done so far. And of course, as always, make sure you leave us suggestions if there's any other builds you would like to see me do. Genesis is hopefully fast approaching, so yeah, feel free to leave some ideas that you would like me to try over there or anywhere else for that matter. And as always, if you enjoy seeing these types of videos and you want to continue to see more, make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and of course I hope to see you again in the next video or the next stream. For now, goodbye.